Does wanting revenge or feeling hatred do anyone any good? No. No matter how much you're hurting, holding on to toxic emotions like hatred or anger or resentment won't bring your loved one back or keep you from getting hurt again. It doesn't give you power or control or punish the person who hurt you. Instead, it punishes you by keeping you locked in a prison of your own making. Forgiveness is the gift you give yourself to rid yourself of those toxic emotions that keep you stuck in that contracted state that we're trying to avoid in order to be happy. No matter how big or small the wound is, you cannot be happy until you forgive. And just to be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean that you're okay with what they did or that you forget or even that you keep them in your life. It just means you let go of the feelings that hold you back from the peace you need to heal and move forward with your life. But how? How do we forgive? With compassion. When you can step back just enough from your pain to look at the situation more as an observer, you'll see that the people who hurt you are actually hurting themselves. And when you recognize their suffering, your negative feelings might just transform into compassion. And that's the path to forgiveness. Sometimes the hardest part is opening yourself up to the actual idea of forgiveness. Once you accept it as an option, the rest kind of falls into place. So, the question is there anyone in your life you're willing to consider forgiving? Because I'm going to walk you through an exercise right now that I can tell you from my own experience can really turn things around. Now, there may be emotions that bubble up to be released during this practice, so don't be shy about using the tissue. It's perfectly normal, okay? Let's get started. You just want to go ahead and sit back and relax. Close your eyes and get comfortable. Think about the person you're holding hatred or anger or resentment for in your heart. Take a couple of deep breaths and just allow yourself to feel your feelings without having to do anything about them. Just notice them. Sit with them. Now acknowledge that there's nothing that can be done about this person's hurtful actions at this point. That's in the past. Just feel the truth of that. And now acknowledge this person may never change. They are how they are. So take another couple of deep breaths as you accept that truth. Now recognize that this person is the way they are and did whatever they did because they have some pain, some lack, some wound of their own they may not even realize. But it's there because only hurting people hurt others. So look at them through the eyes of compassion and see how or what they're suffering. Imagine they're a child that's hurting, who's lashing out at others because of their own pain. Can you feel any compassion? Now just sit for a minute and feel any expansion that compassion in any amount brings to your heart. It's okay to still be angry. Remember, the goal here is to start healing the pain in your heart, not to excuse the actions of others. And you can do this exercise as many times as you need to in order to get some small shift in your heart. And as you feel more compassion, you will find yourself more able to forgive. As I mentioned before, this practice has made a huge difference for me. Just to give you an example, in my early 30s, I took a new job at a new company working for a woman I'd worked for briefly in the past. And I had some reservations based on my gut reaction to the atmosphere when I interviewed, but she brought me in. I met the people in the department. They seemed great, so I signed on and pushed that gut feeling aside. Well, things seemed to go pretty well for a while, other than an odd comment here and there. And then, though, I realized that I was actually caught between two directors who were vying for favor with the vice president. I was being manipulated by unseen forces until one day I found myself out of a job. And I was so crushed because all of the players in this story are women who are working in a predominantly man's world. So I was really discouraged and hurt that women would fall into the trap of power plays and ego and bullying, especially at the expense of other women. So that was until I tried this 3-step approach to forgiveness in 2022, my year of healing and growth. So the first step, I like to start with the quick coherence technique that we did when we talked about gratitude. And that way I start the forgiveness work with an open heart from a place of ease and balance. And then step number 2, I do the forgiveness practice we just walked through, focused on the person that I'm feeling anger or resentment towards, and continuing until I feel enough compassion for them that the negative emotions start to release a little. So in this case, I did it for each of the women who acted hurtfully, and continued until I felt compassion for how hard they had maneuvered to get where they were at, and how intimidated and insecure they felt in the scenario that took place. I realized it wasn't nearly as personal as it felt. It was more coming out of their own pain and fear. And so I forgave them. And then step number 3, I did the forgiveness process again directed at myself. So in this case, I forgave myself for not trusting my gut at the beginning, for not doing the forgiveness work sooner, and for a few other things. And this last step is a real biggie, at least for me. I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to be harder on myself than on anyone else. And so if something happens where I end up hurt, I feel a sense of guilt and shame about it myself, whether it's because I think I deserved it or did something wrong. I just, feel it. So that self-directed negativity is every bit as toxic, and maybe even more so. So I worked with that until I felt enough compassion for myself that any negative emotions and thoughts started to release. And over several months, I did the same 3-step approach to release toxic emotions that I'd carried with me for years and that had been holding me back, relating to my family, my careers, my relationships, and even myself. I felt the pain and the hurt, and I let the emotions release that bubbled up. Yes, I shed some serious tears at times. But through finding that place of compassion, I immediately felt like a huge weight had lifted off me and was able to move forward with a lightness of being that I hadn't even thought possible. I hadn't known it before. And so I really hope that this approach does the same for you.